Welcome back to Middle School Science. I'm Mr. Paul, and I'm coming from Sequoyah Public Schools. Today, we're going to do a few experiments. Actually, we're going to do experiments the entire time. We're not even going to have any PowerPoints or any other material today. So for the last few weeks, we've been talking about the different forms from solids, liquids, and gases and the particles within them. Now today, we're going to play with something that's a little bit contradictory to what we've been talking about. Now, we're going to play with some dry ice. Now, dry ice is one of my favorite experiments to do at the beginning of the year. We do it on Chapter 1 just because it helps create everything that's going to go in the year, especially talking about the particles. Now, before we begin, it's extremely important to not touch dry ice for any reason. It will burn you. Now, so today I am going to actually be using safety goggles and gloves throughout this entire experiment. Now, the first one, I'm going to do what you've already done last week, but I'm going to take a different spin on it. So if you remember last week, you got to use salt, milk, cream, and different components to make some ice cream. We're going to make ice cream today too, but we're going to do it in a different way. So what you're going to do for this one is you're going to need dry ice. And you need something to break it up really, really fine. Now, I'm not going to do it on camera. I've already done it. All you're going to hear is a lot of loud noises, so we're not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about a half cup of dry ice. Now, if you actually do get to do dry ice, you'll notice that when you break them up really fine, it looks like sugar particles. And if you put it up on plastic or glass, it'll vibrate and make a sound. Now, if you do want to do any of these experiments at home, I got dry ice from Reese's today. You can get it for about $1.09 a pound, which they come in about 5-pound blocks. So it's pretty cheap, and you need one to do a whole bunch. I overbought with 2. So I got my dry ice in. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use whole milk and heavy cream. You're going to do 2 to 1. So you want, if I use a half cup of milk, I only want to use a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. So as soon as the very first thing, as soon as we drop the milk in, you're going to notice some awesome steam coming off of it. Well, it's actually carbon dioxide in vapor form now. So we actually have a gas going off of it. Now, like I said, I'm going to put my gloves on today because this stuff will burn you, and I'm going to play with it in a few different ways. So I got my milk in. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. It's going to be super hard still. Look at that just coming off of it. Now, this is carbon dioxide, and it is a gas, but it's not going to rise. It's so heavy, it's actually going to sink to the floor. And if you decided you want to take a big old breath of this, it's actually going to make you catch your breath really, really hard, and then you're going to cough really bad because it is carbon dioxide. Now, it's not harmful to be around it, but I would not inhale it a lot for obvious reasons. So the next component that I'm going to put in is some heavy cream. And like I said, we're going to do 2 to 1. We're only going to put about a 1/4 cup of cream in this one. If I put my measuring cup on my side. I'm going to mix it up a little bit more. And if you can hear it, it's already becoming really, really hard. So last week when you had to really, really work for your ice cream, if you wanted to use the Epsom salt or a salt method and continually mix it, that's what you'd have to do. And this one's going to be a little bit easier. So I'm just going to put a little bit of vanilla in it. You can put chocolate syrup or strawberry syrup or anything like that you would like. So first I'm just going to put some vanilla in it to make some vanilla ice cream. Got to give it some flavoring. I'm going to mix it up a little bit more. Now, of course, we got to have some sugar. It's got to be sweet. If we don't have sugar, ice cream doesn't taste good, right? So I'm going to put about a half cup of sugar in it also. Then I'm going to add a little bit more milk because the dry ice has already started causing it to become ice cream. It's already becoming a solid again. So all that liquid that we put in earlier is already frozen. So like I said, if you ever made ice cream at home, you'd have to work for it and then put it in the freezer, or you'd have to churn it for a very long time. Well, my method took a little less work, and it's going to taste just as good. Now, what's those things called when you go to the mall, those little dry balls? The dragon things. No, the dragon ones. I can't think of what they're called right now. Well, anyways, this is going to have the same kind of consistency as those that everyone likes to go and get from the mall. The ones that you put in your mouth and you blow out steam. So, in order to make it, that's all you got to do. Now, if you want it a little bit thinner, you need to add milk before it sets up because it is still cooling this entire time. And if I leave it alone in this bowl, as I will in a minute, it's going to become stuck to the bowl because of how cold it is. Now, the most important thing about this is you do not eat it right after you make it. You have to let it set, or it will stick to your tongue and it'll burn you. So I'm going to set this to the side, and I'm going to eat that at the end. So now I have my snack with maybe those chocolate strawberries that are over there. Be delicious. Okay, so that's experiment 1. So all you simply needed to do that was just a little bit of dry ice, some milk, some heavy cream, some vanilla, and some sugar. Took less than 5 minutes. Awesome summer experiment. And obviously, anything that you can eat after you make an experiment, it's even better. So definitely try that one. So our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set this experiment up because this one's going to take about 7 minutes to do. So we're going to cut up some red cabbage. Now, if you've been in my class before, we've used red cabbage for multiple weeks. Red cabbage is actually a really good base indicator for pH levels. It sits about 11.6. And if you add different acids to it or bases, it will change in variation. It'll get lighter or it'll get darker. So today we're going to use it, and I'm going to show you some acids with it. And then I'm going to show you what dry ice will do to it also. So all you do is cut up a nice little chunk of it, and then you need to shred it a little bit more. So I'm going to dice it, be nice and safe, knuckles out. Again, most of these experiments today, you need to have a parent or guardian in the household with you to do it. Don't be doing any of this at home because it can be very dangerous if you do it by yourself. Especially, believe it or not, even the dry ice can burn you in severely at that. And of course, I'm using a knife, and I'm actually going to be using boiling water in a minute too. So those are very good things to have a guardian or an adult supervise you while you're doing these. So, obviously, my cutting skills are not as good as some other people's, but we'll deal with it. So all you're going to do, you don't have to be a culinary master. You just need to shred it up a little bit, nice and pretty. And then I got 3 different sized beakers. And I'm going to put it in each one. Just enough to start getting some of that red cabbage out of there. Cut up a little bit more. Now, before we started, I actually put on some hot water behind me to start boiling. Lucky enough to have a stove in this classroom and not have to have it on a heat plate, which is awesome. So, I'm going to check on the water behind me. Okay. Good call. I'm going to move my ice cream cup now. Okay, so I got boiling water now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some hot water. Now I'm going to put it in the sink and pour it, so obviously I don't burn myself. And I'm going to add it to the red cabbage. Now, a second ago I said this is going to take a few minutes, about 5 minutes, because this is going to have to sit in order for the pH level of the water to consist of 11.6 and to take all that coloring out of the cabbage. Okay, so there's that. Now, there's no exact science to how much water you need for it. Just add as much as you want, and it'll slowly bleed out as it goes. So I'm going to set this to the side. Like I said, it's going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to set up properly. While I do that, I'm going to clean this cabbage that I made a mess. I'll slide this out of the way. Okay. So the very next thing that we're going to do, while that sets up, is probably the best experiment out of this, in my opinion. We are going to try to create liquid nitrogen. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to get to around 350 degrees negative Fahrenheit, but we are going to get about halfway there. So, in this shortage that we're going on through right now with everything that's been going on, got to give a shout out to Bennett's Pharmacy for hooking me up with this. This is 99% alcohol. You can use it with 70% alcohol, but it won't have the same effects. Now, normally, you can be able to go to Walmart and you can get this with no problem. But again, with the pandemic, everything is in short supply. So I got lucky enough to get a hold of this, which is awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill it up about halfway, about 250 milliliters of alcohol. Now, I am going to put my safety goggles back on for this one because for many reasons that this is going to get extremely cold. Dry ice hits about negative 110 Fahrenheit, and alcohol freezes about 140. So what we're trying to do here is to keep the alcohol liquefied, but bring down the temperature further. And when we do this, this is going to help freeze some different things. So when I put this in, you're going to notice an extremely violent reaction. It's going to be a little sporadic. It's going to push the dry ice around a little bit, and it's going to produce a lot of bubbles. Where is mine? There. Well, doesn't matter. So if you notice right off the bat, it almost looks like I'm boiling water right now. It's extremely violent. So, like I said, alcohol freezes about 140 Fahrenheit. So what we're trying to do here is lower the temperature, the surface temperature of the alcohol, so that we can create a substance to freeze things with. Now, if I put this in hot water, we're going to have a different reaction, which we're going to do in a little bit. But look out how the dry ice is being pushed around the container, and it's pushing all the bubbles up. Very violent reaction. So we're going to wait just a second so that cools down, or so that actually gets to where we want to be. And Mother's Day is coming up. I know you don't get to make all those awesome craft ideas that we do in class right now, but don't forget to make something for your mom. So today, I'm going to make some frozen roses for her. Well, actually, they're going to be broken before the end of it, but I'll show you. So, I'm going to get rid of some of these thorns and the extra leaf out of the way, just so I can dip it down with no problems. Or be like me and get stuck with a thorn right off the bat. Experiment with some frozen roses. But we're also going to do a few other things. So typically when you're in my class, I always like to do candy. So we're going to freeze some gummy worms, a little bit of chocolate, maybe Twizzler. Now, there it is. Very important. So, since this is so cold, you cannot put anything in with your hands. If this touches you, it will be more severe than actually having the dry ice applied to your hand or anything. It is extremely cold. So, I know a lot of your moms have tongs or anything like that at home. So, if you want to do this at home, make sure that you're using gloves first, eye protection, and something to put the stuff in. Because if not, it will burn you severely. Now, I am not even going to pull it out until it's fully dried off because of that. So, let's see. Start with the gummy worm. Let's go with the gummy worm. Now, if you ever had a gummy worm, it's pretty flimsy, stretchable, not hard at all, really soft. We're about to find out what happens. So I'm going to stick my gummy worm in there. there. Let it set for about, a minute. Come back over here. I'm going to grab this cutting board. Now, if you can tell, it's still cooling down. There's still a violent reaction, especially with that dry ice still in there. But if it's, even with gloves on, it is extremely cold. So, you notice right off the bat, my gummy worm isn't as bendy as what it was. Now, I'm going to make sure I get it completely dried off. I'm going to set it down. Now, I didn't set it on there for about 2 minutes, but if you notice right off the bat, it's a lot harder than it would be if I pulled one of these gummy worms apart. Pretty soft. So I'm going to throw a little bit more dry ice in there because I want to continue to make sure the temperature goes down. It's not quite as cold as what I want it yet, so I need a little bit more dry ice. So, the next thing, let's try it with the rose. Let's see what happens with the rose. This one we're going to sit in a little bit longer, and let's see if we can make one of those fairy tale dry ice roses. Just going to let it sit in there. I'm going to grab another one, do the same thing. Now, obviously, you can experiment. You can do several different things. You could do any kind of candy that you wanted, or test anything that's soft that maybe you're going to see the consistency change. And I'm going to actually put in a gummy worm in a second because it did not get the quite results that I wanted. So I'm going to set this one in just a little bit longer and pull it out in a minute. So I'm going to set this stuff to the side. Wait, give that a couple seconds to cool down and freeze a little bit. Now, if you notice, it's probably hard to see on the camera, but my actual glass container is actually freezing. You can see the buildup on the outside. The temperature around it is so much warmer that the actual moisture is freezing to the sticks of it now. So that's what's going on. Same with if you had dry ice on your hands. It would be the same thing. So I think we're finally getting down to where the core temperature that we want. Hopefully closer to about 100 or about negative 110. I try to like to get around negative 140, but it depends on how much dry ice we have in the way. So, here's our rose. You can tell the difference right off the bat. See a little bit of moisture, there's a little bit of it dripping off right now. I'm not even going to get that on my hands. So, typically, your beautiful rose, you'd just be able to pull it off. Nice and nice and nice, very velvety. This rose, on the other hand, you heard the crunches in it. Now, this one could go a little bit longer in it, but it's just falling apart. All that moisture that rose is containing is now freezing. So it's going to be a little bit harder. So I'm going to let this one sit just a little bit longer. And then we're going to come back to that one too, just so we can get as many things in today as we possibly can. Now, we had some red cabbage water sitting over there for a minute now. So, while that's ready, what we're going to do next is we need to strain this. So, we don't want the cabbage water in it. So, I'm going to put this in the sink real quick. Now, I'm going to use a strainer. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to put it on top. Sorry, got a little bit of silence here. All right. Got a little bit of cabbage still in there. Just going to wash these out, make sure I get all the cabbage out of it. Make it a little bit easier. Okay, so the next thing, we're going to go back into our pH indicator. Now, as I said earlier, the cabbage has a pH indicator about 11.6, and we're going to see if we can manipulate that by adding different materials to it. So I'm going to add a base, an acid, and then I'm going to throw some dry ice one in the middle one, just to see if you can know what's going on and see why it would do that. And if we're going to go off the first two and see if you can figure out what it's going to actually do. So the acid, for my first one, I'm using a lime, which is an acid. It's got some citric acid in it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze out some of it. Well, if I can. Five minutes. Okay, so if you notice right off the bat, it turns pink, right? Okay, so now I'm going to add some baking soda, which is a base. And what do you think is going to happen to this one? Is it going to be blue? Or is it going to do anything at all? Is it closer to the actual base level? Now again, I'm not measuring everything out. I'm just going to try to show you, if we were doing the actual acid experiments, I'd show you that. But I kind of want to focus on the dry ice. So I'm just giving you a few different examples. So if you notice, that one turned a blue. So we have a blue for our base on the left side, or for right for you. We had the pink, which is our acid, and then we had the purple in the middle. Okay. So the question is what do you think is going to happen if I put some dry ice in it? Do you think it's going to turn pink? Blue? We got clear from the back, from the principal. Let's see what happens. Now, it's going to be beautiful, beautiful, carbon dioxide coming off of it back in its gas form out of the solid. Okay, so actually, it's going to lighten up a little bit. It's not going to be quite clear because it's not that strong of an acid. It is a carbonic acid, and it's going to be a little bit less purple, so it's got a little bit more of the pH, but it's not quite as the citric acid. It's beautiful, though. Just remember, Mother's Day is coming up. Beautiful science experiments for her. Show her some pretty colors. Okay, so I'm going to set this one to the side now. I know we're going through several things. So for that experiment, all you need is some dry ice, different types of acids and bases, and some red cabbage and some boiling water. Now, it's simple. You can do a whole bunch. When we do our acid and pH experiments in our classroom, we do a wide variety. I just kind of wanted to show you the difference of what you think would happen with the actual dry ice. Now, we're going to come back to this real quick. This thing should be done. We have a gummy worm, and our rose is back.